Hello and welcome to a special edition of the DP World Tour Picks and Bets. Skylar, Hoke here. I'm joined by my friend, as always, Tom Jacobs. Tom, how are we doing?
I'm good. How are you? You crushed by the USA's late goal conceding to Wales in the penalty?
So I've caught up on the sport of soccer in about, a day and a half here. So I think the refs were terrible in this game. England, of course, scores 6 goals for you this morning before I get out of bed. And here we are, needing you guys to crush Wales coming up here. So let's get out of group play and see what happens. But, it's not just one American here. We got 2 of us on board, 2 big soccer fans from stateside here. Ryan Baroff with us as well. RB, what's going on?
What's up, guys? Good to be here. Yeah, this was my annual spend 20 minutes trying to watch some soccer. I agree that the refs were terrible. I don't know what they're supposed to look like, but it did seem like they missed a lot of cards and fouls.
It is funny because when they talk about, I think they spoke at the time that the ref was young and he'd only just turned 35 or something. I can't remember. They might have merged it. It might have been the game before because it could have merged into 2 things. But I'm pretty sure they said it was like a Qatari ref that was only 35, and you think it doesn't sound young for a referee, but I guess it probably is. Even in American sports, it's pretty young. So, but yeah, I mean, look, England don't normally do that, so we're pretty bullish over here. There's probably people lining in the streets already saying that we're going to win the World Cup, but we won't, so we won't get too excited.
Well, what we know that we can keep talking on and always go back to Old Faithful is already the DP World Tour's 2022-2023 season is upon us. We wrapped up this past week with Jon Rahm winning the final event of the year. Congrats to you, Baroff, on cashing that ticket. We always skip those short odds, and of course, you just find it there in your outright/doubles. I'm sure you got. But so Rahm wins, Rory wins the season-long title, so he wins both the PGA Tour and the DP World Tour titles, which is a heck of a year. Any closing statements on the season?
That was a fun off season. No, I think it was a great year. I mean, I think one of the highlights is really this run of winners we've been on. Not just us winners, but I'm saying the actual winners of the events. All these guys are in Ryder Cup consideration, right? They're all starting to play well. They're all looking ahead there. We'll talk about Guido, of course, but I mean Guido and Bob and our boy Jordan Smith finally getting off the schneid after half a decade of lost bets. Peter's playing great, right? Thomas Dietrich playing great on our side of the pond. I just think there's a lot of really good things happening, and much deserved for Rahm and Rory up top.
I think it's one of those things, right? That it still feels a little bit wrong that Rory and Rahm can just contend the DP World Tour fine. I mean, not so much Rahm because he just won the tournament, right? But Rory wins it with very limited golf, but that's just how the points are skewed for majors, right? But I think and it's not been missed, right? But the way Ryan Fox has performed this season, to finish second in amongst all those players, I still think he's probably the most improved golfer in the world. I think you sort of noticed last week, and maybe it's just an end of season performance or whatever. But maybe when he does make the step up, he's not quite good enough. And it would have been really interesting to your point that we sort of had off air just saying, is they're going to give away 10 PGA Tour cards this season, which we're assuming go to the 10 non-card holders already. So it wouldn't just be the top 10. It'd be a real shame if they just did the top 10 and if you don't get in the top 10, you don't get one.
Yeah, I think it's 10 cards. Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be sure. three players or something. But so it would have been. We got the list here. It would have been Rahm, Meronk, Peters, Jordan Smith, Thurston Lawrence, Adrian Otaegui, Rasmus Højgaard, Ewan Ferguson, Robert McIntyre, Richie Ramsey, Yannick Paul, which is a really interesting list, right? There's a couple of players that you just don't expect to make the jump over to the PGA Tour. Some probably maybe wouldn't even go. They're so rooted into European Tour life. But there's a couple of players like Rasmus Højgaard, Meronk, Fox that could have been really interesting. So there's going to be a lot to play for in the DP World Tour next season. I still have my doubts about the strategic alliance, but the fact that you can go from Challenge Tour, DP World Tours, PGA Tour in 3 seasons now is pretty exciting, especially for guys that have just got through Q School as well. There's a lot to play for.
Yeah, I think the last name on that list is the one that stands out to me, right? You said Yannick Paul would have been the closing card member. You think almost the 2 routes that were taken in that Paul family, right? Jeremy got through qualifying school at Korn Ferry Tour the year before when Yannick did not. Yannick finds his way to the Challenge Tour. Jeremy doesn't get through on the Korn Ferry Tour cutoff to get it. He's got another season on the Korn Ferry Tour. Yannick could have made that jump there. So it's just going to be interesting which way these kind of journeymen / also young kids coming out of school or wherever you may land, which way they pursue. Definitely have multiple options to get the tour now. So excited for it. I agree on your point though, Tom. Like, I still think standalone Ryan Fox, I mean, maybe 1-2 with Smith, had the best of the DP World Tour years, right? And deserving in our eyes as a Mayo Media Network DP World Tour champions for us.
Yeah,
So
I think with Smith, like, I was really impressed with him, and towards the end of the season, I was obviously very bullish on him. I sort of said that like he's put himself into Ryder Cup consideration and things like that. But like, I do think that what Fox did was like a bigger leap, because Smith basically put all his best golf together and won an event, which is something he's already done, like, you know, in 2017 or whatever it was. So like, it wasn't too out of the ordinary. Whereas Fox, when just won twice, probably should have won like 5 times. Like, you know, it just felt like to me like it was a completely different player. But Smith, just from like a ball striking perspective, is just, you know, top quality. And whereas Fox does it kind of find it and plays really quickly, probably to his detriment sometimes. Jordan Smith is, you know, precision golf. So it's definitely interesting to see how he, like, because you think of people like Jordan Smith and you know, Richie Ramsey's and people like that, like, oh, if they got a PGA Tour card, they probably wouldn't do anything with it. But like, Tom Stietrich has been fantastic. Bezuidenhout and Rye have had good events. Like, they haven't done great, but they've kept their cards. Like, you know, Bezuidenhout doesn't have a DP World Tour card. He doesn't have status next year because he gave it all up to go, you know, fully in on the PGA Tour. So, interesting note for this week. He probably gets it back, you know, winning at home. But like, it's, you know, it's definitely interesting. I think it's a different dynamic for the DP World Tour we haven't seen yet.
For sure. And I think what we're here today, and we'll just kind of put a note, is we're here to preview the rest of the year from the calendar year perspective, 2022. We'll be back with weekly shows in 2023, but with the calendar, with the holidays, with a little bit of everything. I mean, there's 2 events this week, there's 2 events next week, and there's a couple more to close out the year. A lot going on. We're going to do our best today to kind of cover the rest of the season by going through the Challenge Tour, highlighting some of our favorite graduates. So there was 20 guys that got cards there, highlight some of our favorites. Q School, again, same thing there. Look into, I believe it was 27 who ended up getting cards for the season. So highlight some of our favorites there. And then with the events for this week and the odds that are already out, kind of highlight some guys that we're looking at for this week and probably can pepper those same ones the following week. And without further ado, I want to make sure you mention, if you are an audio listener, you can find us on any of your podcast platforms, Daily Fantasy Sports Picks and Bets, The Mix. Rate, review, subscribe goes a long way for us. We appreciate all the love you give us. So with that, let's dive right into the Challenge Tour. And I think, again, for those that are maybe not as familiar, or those that kind of, you know, are more betting on the PGA Tour side, again, the Challenge Tour is the DP World Tour's version of the Korn Ferry Tour. So season-long standings, they're going to take the top 20 golfers on their points list and give them full, you know, DP World Tour cards. I say full, maybe it's fringe. Sometimes they're going to get cut off based off some of these early events, or maybe the Rolex Series events if they don't play well out of the gates. But all of these guys do have ample opportunity to make it work. So I'll just tell you the top 5 golfers from that list here. Nathan Kimsey was the leader on the season. Jeremy Frieberhaus was second. Alexander Knapp, third. Old friend J.C. Ritchie was fourth. And Mikkel Lindberg was fifth. Surprisingly enough, I don't think any of us have these guys kind of on our short list to watch for the season. Baroff, I'm going to head to you first. Who kind of on this list stands out to you as guys we're interested in this season?
Yeah, so it's interesting, you know, looking back, you realize how long the season was, right? Because Richie, as you mentioned, was one of the best players on that tour this year. And but when you look back, he did almost all the damage early on in that South African swing, and then really hasn't done anything since, right? But everything that you look at, he's sort of popping as you know, one of the top names. But yeah, you know, going down a little bit, and I think there's some guys who we saw this summer who popped up onto the main tour, if it was, you know, the Hero or the Kazoo, those sort of middling events where the fields were weaker. But the first one was Matthew Baldwin, right? And I mean, Baldwin, he's been around for a very long time. I believe he has 1 career win on the Challenge Tour, albeit about a decade ago. But he was consistently in the top 10 or so for those handful of starts he had this summer. And obviously a really good ball striker. He can putt, which is, you know, nice for a change. Most of the guys that we bet over here don't putt really well. But just seems very versatile. Like, he can do it on those link style courses, but just very consistent ball striking, which you don't normally see those challenge tour guys kind of pop up. So he's sort of number one, and I actually did bet him this week. I think he makes a lot of sense for that course when we dive into it. The other one also playing this week is Bryce Easton, right, from South Africa. I know a lot about Bryce Easton from playing Showdown, right? He's sort of one of those guys who, again, he can pop up ball strike. He makes a lot of birdies. He does it in a lot of different ways, but he scores. He makes birdies. He has not won, I don't believe, any professional event. So I think that's maybe the next logical step for him. But those are a couple of I'll call them the bottom feeders who I like. What about you, Tom?
I think for me, like just looking at those top five and why we've kind of chose to skip them, I guess, is Nathan Kimsey is a player that's been here before, right? So he turned professional in 2013, spent 2 years on Challenge Tour, didn't really do a lot, dropped down to the Europro Tour, but he actually got through every single stage of Q School, so 14 rounds of golf in 2017 to get to the 2018 Rookie Tour season. Finishes top 10 at the Qatar Masters and the PGA Championship in Australia, but fell back down to the Challenge Tour. So it depends how you look at it, right? Because he had a pretty impressive, like amateur career in the sense that like he'd played on the Walker Cup, he was part of the victorious team at the European Amateur Team Championship for England. He'd won in Florida, he'd won the St Andrews Links or finished runner-up at St Andrews Links. Like he was a very decent player, and it might be that it's just taken him a long time. He's now gone and 1-2 times on the Challenge Tour in a year, July and November. Like again, one of those players that he beat was obviously Bryce Easton at the Challenge Tour final. He beat Gary Seagrass, who is a fellow graduate. Like maybe it's time that he just shows his talent. But when you look at kind of the others, I mean, Jeremy Fryberhouse, interestingly enough, Sky was someone I think we brought up at like one of the events early in the season, maybe the European Masters, because he sort of played there before. But Alexander Knapp, like he's been here before. Mikael Lindberg's been here before. JC Ritchie's interesting because I think there is another level to him, but I think he's a guy that very much needs to take advantage of these early South African events to shape his season. So that would be my quick kind of hit on the top 5 guys there. But for me, my favourite players that have come from here, Oliver Hundebol Jorgensen was really impressive. I think it was at the Hero Open, Ryan, as you spoke about earlier, that he played well in, that he finished 5th, and that was the event where Crocker beat Pepperell. He shot a 67 on that Sunday, which I think was the best score of anyone in the top 5 as well. So really, really impressive stuff. He won 3 times on the Nordic Golf League, or he won on the Nordic Golf League once, I think, in 2019, but he was still an amateur. So the fact that he's done all that, in a short space of time suggests to me that he's got another level to him. So I think Oliver Hundebol Jorgensen could be, really impressive. But as I say, it was 1 win, not 3 wins, on the Nordic Golf League. But he also lost in a playoff to Christian Krogh Johansson, who again I think is another one that we should probably be keeping an eye on. That Krogh Johansson is he's been a bit of a late bloomer. I think it's probably fair to say. Like he's 27, 28 years of age, but he seems to be like he could be the more consistent type this season. When you think about like what we thought maybe Gouvier would be and things like that, I think he could fit that mold. So those were the 2 guys I think we can probably rely on the most. I think Hundebol Jorgensen's got the highest upside, and Christian Krogh Johansson has got probably the solid level about him.
Yep. I'm definitely excited for those. From a standpoint statistically, this is one thing where I think the Korn Ferry Tour has an advantage for us, at least following it, is it has at least basic stats, right?
Yeah.
You have greens and regulation, you have driving distance, you have scrambling, you have stuff where you can have a profile of guys. Got to do like that big preview of the KFT grads with Ryan French, and we knew basically how these guys' games was. Some of these guys that have popped up, we get a 4-round stroke gain sample, which is more than enough for Baroff to be able to kind of define a couple of guys.
Yes.
But we truly don't know. Like I didn't know Yannick's game going into last season, right? You didn't really understand some of these guys' how they actually play. So because the challenge tour is just scores. So when we do look at pure scores, we've talked about this website before in the past. Tour Tips is something where kind of does a good adjustment on it overall. And I look at the past season. This was their top 5 of the grads when I looked at the entire season there. JC Ritchie was number 1. Which makes sense kind of as profile what the season was. Krogh Johansson was 2. Matthew Baldwin was 3. One that we bet on a huge stretch during the summer I don't even know if we cashed a top 5 because his Sundays were so bad, but Jens Dantorp was all over our betting cards for
He
a
was.
month there. And he was like 28-1 in DP World Tour events at a time, right? Like,
Yeah.
he got low, and then Sorday would be 5th on that list. Now, 3 golfers that I really wanted to just at least pop into, and one that we have seen for a good amount of time. I say good amount of time, at least he's kind of been popping up on the DP World Tour a bit here, is Daniel Hillier. Hillier's 24 years old. We saw him 4 times, I guess, this season. He made all 4 cuts on the DP World Tour season, including 2 top 12s. He had won on the Challenge Tour, and his last Challenge Tour events were 1st, 4th, 11th, 64th, 23rd. Like, he had a decent season. It wasn't anything crazy, but we've seen him pop. And from his amateur career is where we really know him. He had a 3rd place in 2019 or 2021 on the DP World Tour. Amateur career, I believe he was like 17, he was a 3-time winner. 16, he was a 2-time winner. And then he came out and he kind of cut his teeth on the Japan Tour. I think it was in a couple starts over there in Australia too, because he is Australian. So popped around until he kind of got a home on the Challenge Tour. And now we're finally going to get to see him for a full season. He's the first one that I think makes a ton of sense. And another one who had really good stretch of golf on the DP World Tour, or the Challenge Tour before he fell off. Freddie Scott had a stretch where he finished inside the top 5 in 6 of 9 events last summer. And then he completely fell off the map. He did not have a single top 30 since then. So you do wonder, and a guy like that, I guess there is the battlefield promotion, right? If you win 3 times, then you get to the DP World Tour. Or does like Scott just kick back? Like, it's hard to know like his game as a full, but like he had it locked up at that point. He did play twice in the DP World Tour and didn't do too much with it, but he was a winner on the Pro Golf Tour the year prior. I just think his stretch of golf was really good at one point, and I'm intrigued to see that. And I'm going to hit one last one before I need to catch my breath. And I'm intrigued this week a little bit too. So we've seen golfers from South Africa just consistently come out, right? We have these really big AMs that are good. Of course, we have multiple on the PGA Tour, multiple on the DP World Tour. Like, they are littered. And one of those top amateurs, back in 18 and 17, I believe were his last 2 years as amateurs. Yep. Was Dion Germahies. And Germahies was if you look at his 2018, I mean, he was top 10 in about 75% of his events as an amateur that year, being the South African amateur champion. So he's going to get a chance to play, in South Africa these next 2 weeks. He did get on the Sunshine Tour. That's kind of where he originally started before he popped over to the Challenge Tour. He was a winner on the Sunshine Tour this year. So I don't know. I just think that makes sense. He popped over to the DP World Tour to play those events earlier this year. Now with a full year under his belt in Challenge Tour, I think he's got a lot of upside. I know our friend Brad Todd likes him as well, so that's always a good sign too. But that covers probably anybody that I'm intrigued off at the top of the list here. I know that was a lot of talking for us. Anybody else that we missed?
I think just going back to Freddie Scott a little bit, or Freddie Shot a little bit, was the fact that like, what I do now to figure out how old people are, I kind of look at my birth year, because I consider myself old now. So I look at my birth year and work myself back. So like now I'm the big 30s coming up for me. I kind of go, right, okay, so if he's 5 years younger than me, he's still pretty young. Freddie Shot was born in 2001. So like, he's a 21-year-old. So I think the fact that he kind of got hot and then went away isn't too much of a big deal for him. I think like you kind of look at what he did in that short space of time and realize he's a really high talent. Tom McKibben for me is the one. Like we talked about him a lot last season. I think I was trying to bet him at 400-1 and kind of make him a thing, and it wasn't. But like everyone kind of talks about the fact that he came from Holywood, which is Rory McIlroy's home golf course. He nearly won the Irish Challenge events, and to me, like he genuinely looks like, I don't think necessarily a superstar, but he's just someone that's like really young, really talented. 2 of his 4 best finishes, interestingly, looking at this swing season or whatever you want to call it, 2 of his 4 best finishes in the OWGR came in South Africa. So I feel like he could make an early impact, and that could have a lasting effect. When you look, 4th and 6th his last 2 starts, we had a 2nd, a 3rd, a 4th, a 5th, and a 7th in the season as well. So Tom McKibben to me was just incredibly solid. Like when we were talking about him earlier in the season, we were like, okay, he's got a bit of upside. He's shot a 65 here and there, and now it's like, well, actually no, he's put together real events and real, 4-round stretches. So to me, Tom McKibben, he did everything but win last season. I do like what Ryan said about Bryce Easton. I think there's another level to him as well, which we'll probably come on a bit to later when we talk about picks for the Joburg Open. I guess Jong-Won Ko is pretty young, the French player. He's probably got a little bit of upside as well. But to me, it felt like the Challenge Tour was littered with these guys that do kind of fritter between the two tours, and even at the Q School, which we can come on to now, like there's a similar type of players as well. So I think you really have to pick through the vines and see who's actually got upside and who's just been there before and is like to get back down again.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, you could pick through this, and I mean, the thing is, we're previewing the next 5-6 weeks here, just walking through. We're going to come in with probably a little bit more of a knowledge on all these as we approach the season. Now we start off with Rolex Series events, right? So not all of these guys are going to be able to get into them, but we're going to be able to have some time to diagnose what we think of these guys. And if you're early on them, it's probably the best time to chase some good numbers, right? If you're correct. And I mean, you think of what Thriston Lawrence did from winning a 36-hole event, but he probably would have won a 72-hole event. And to the season that he had, he would have been on the PGA Tour, right? Like he was a Sunshine Tour player to the PGA Tour player in that short amount of time. So pretty incredible to know that. Now, Q School, you said it earlier, Tom. So it is no different than, for those that are familiar with the Korn Ferry Tour Q School. So you're starting with first stage which was I think 12 different stages, into maybe 8, into 4 second round stages, into 1 final stage. Top 25 in ties were the ones that graduated onto the DP World Tour. Now you're going to see some of these guys that were 26 through 50, still get starts depending on where they qualify. Some are going to pop down to the Challenge Tour based off of that. Now we haven't had Q School 18. I think it was 18. And I probably had it in 19.
19, yeah.
So why I think so big at Q School is we had two-time winners in one season graduate from Q School, and that was Kitayama and Guido came out of the same Q School class. So now we have a little bit more. At the time, I mean, I didn't really know anything about these guys, right? It was more of the Wild West of golf 4 or 5 years ago, where you couldn't really figure out what's going on with a lot of these guys. But quickly Kitayama won. I think it was his second start, right? Guido took a little bit longer, but there's ample opportunity for all of these guys to compete. The top 5 in the standings for Q School, and the Q School final round is 6, or final stage is 6 rounds. So it's a good test of golf for them. Simone Forstrom would have been finishing first. David Rivetto and Daniel Brown in second. Kirdesh Affy Barnrett, Alejandro Del Rey, and Nick Backham tied up there in the top 5. Now, again, so we had 28 graduates in total for this. I'm going to do the same thing, Baroff. Pass it over to you. Who are some of the guys that stand out for you that graduated from Q School?
Yeah, well, I think obviously Barnrat's one that stands out, but I'll let you dive into him. But for me, the first one there was Daniel Brown, who we talked about kind of quickly off air. I also bet him this week for the Joburg Open. He's another guy, he came off I think it was the Euro Pro Tour, whatever that one's called. Also never won, right? But he's been close, has a ton of runner-ups. Wasn't really doing much this year at all until the last month and a half, where then he went 8th, 2nd, 11th, 16th, 10th. And that 10th was in their what's it called? The Rolex Grand Final, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw what he did that week. He opened 78-77. Shot a Saturday 65, a Sunday 64, then went to Q School, shot 6 rounds in the 60s and finished 3rd. So he's on some kind of a heater. I'm going to ride it at 100-1. He probably figured something out. But I think that was one that sort of stood out. And then just in terms of guys who I know and I bet, Joel Stalter, who won, he won in Austria a handful of years ago when all of us were probably just starting this wonderful gambling habit that we have. He's just, he's a good ball striker, kind of like a mini Joost Luiten mold in terms of hits a lot of fairways, pretty accurate. He can putt well when he gets hot, but more of like an iron player. And he played over in the States. I'm drawing a blank as to where he played college golf, but I just like that model. Like I like these Euro guys who come over here, play college golf, win. Class never goes away, right? So he's one of the veterans who I'll be looking at this year.
He played at
California Golden
Cal.
Bear.
Oh, that's right. He was part of that. Yeah, that squad. I remember.
Interestingly, beat Richard Mansell. What could have been different if Richard Mansell had won that event? I imagine. But
yeah,
it's. I think with people like Joe Stalter, right? Like I don't necessarily focus on him because he's a guy that I class as he's been here before, and what's he going to do with this time around that was different to last time. But he's still only 30 years of age, and at least he did win like on the Challenge Tour. Like one of them was a co-sanctioned event with the European Tour, and one was an outright Challenge Tour win. So like at least he's won. He then played on the French Tour, which I didn't even know was a thing as well. So that was pretty impressive. But like to me, like he's won. Like when you look at some of the older people, I mean, there's going to be guys like I'm just going to go kind of through some names that like we're pretty familiar with. You've already mentioned Afid Barmrat, Pedro Figueiredo. I think you'll love to talk about Sky at some point, but he's a guy that's been there before. Lorenzo Vera we know about. Marcel Seam definitely know about at this point. Gary Stow is someone that's interesting enough was a very good player at one point. Garrick Porteous, Adrian Sadier. So there's actually a lot of French representation from the Q School of players that have already been there in the past. So what you make of those guys returning, I don't know. It's hard to really decide whether they're kind of going to be good players or not. I mean, that Gary Stow was the guy that won the Abu Dhabi event that Keimer, I think, led by kind of like 5 or 6 shots and blew away in 2015. So I think it was Keimer. But anyway, he beat Rory McIlroy by 1 stroke. So he's got some pedigree, Gary Stow, but like it just feels like to me like it's been a long time he's been in the wilderness.
Yeah, it's a range of names, right? I think maybe in the past we might have seen like different OWGR or at least starts. I mean, there is one golfer out of the 28 that have graduated that had less than like 20 rounds played on the OWGR events on the season. There was 2 golfers that had 22 rounds played, and everybody else was like 44 and up. So like we aren't just getting amateurs or guys that, even from some of the lower tours. I mean, we definitely got a little bit of recycling of some of the guys that were just on that edge. I'm very happy Lorenzo Vera kept his card because I feel like he was close towards the end of the season, and I'm definitely keeping a tight eye there. Barnrat, a little odd that he landed on the DP World Tour. Wouldn't feel like he would be that guy. But, excited, and we know he can go low. But I think there is some of these guys that we can dig into. I wanted to give a quick shout out, and I was going to ask you, Baroff. We might have to have Wiley investigate this guy. Gunnar Weeb.
Yeah, I was going to mention that.
Gunnar Weeb. So 30, like he's the one that has 4 rounds, okay? And why I say ask Wiley on it is he played in the Barbasol this year and made the cut. It was his only event of the season. Now, he played 1 event in 2021. He missed a cut on the Corn Ferry Tour, and he hadn't played an OWGR event since 2017 prior to that. Now, the thing is, 33 years old. So I do a little Googling. He is like an assistant pro or like definitely a clubhouse like guy. And I think he might be from out west. So I don't
his
know.
Dad is, I assume his dad is Mark Weeby, who was a tour pro many moons ago.
Okay, that would make sense. He looks like he's a California guy. I just don't know.
I think he played at Torrey Pines. I think is when I looked at the OWGR stuff earlier. I think it was his first start, so he must have got in there on some sort of exemption, which makes sense if he's a California touring pro of some description that he got in that way.
Yeah, it looks like Mark Weeby is his dad, so at least it is in the genes.
He did Monday qualify for the Barbasol this year, and he was a Monday qualifier in the KFT event. Looks like he Monday qualified.
He went to University of San Diego.
Yeah, it was just that's a pretty cool story, right? To have. I mean, I don't know if the opportunity is different because his dad was a tour player, right? But somebody 33 years old who's never really had status.
Yeah, he's not young.
So getting through, that's pretty cool there. So I thought that would be a shout out. And the fact that he did make the cut on a PGA Tour event too, right? Like, that's pretty wild. So he was one that I thought was interesting. So if I went through my list, I liked Brown. Tom, actually, I'll have you dive into both these golfers. I know they were on your list. You liked, I think we agree, and I think the OWGR would definitely agree too. Rio Histatoon would be probably the best golfer that graduated from the Challenge Tour. Do you have kind of any notes on him?
Yeah, so for me, like I was just looking, like he had 3 wins on what is the equivalent of the Challenge Tour in Japan. So the Japanese Challenge Tour is called like something like Abiba TV Tour or something like that. So that was obviously pretty, the fact he's only 20 years old now, he must have been 19, 20 when he was winning those 3 events. He shot a final round 61, Hisatoon did earlier this year on the Japanese tour to lose by 1 in the final day, which was really impressive. What really caught my eye on top of that was the fact he had 3 fourth place finishes, a 7th and 2 more top 9. So it was a really consistent effort from him all season in Japan. But he also finished 12th at the Zozo, and like I know that it's a limited field, but like there was legitimately good players in that field, and to finish 12th among that is pretty impressive when you're riding a good stretch of form. So that I thought was to me, he looks like, if I'm talking about guys that just have the biggest upside, I think he's probably it. Like I think we talk about people like Takumi Kanaya and things like that, like the breakthrough. I mean, this is I don't think it's quite on the same length, but weren't we talking about Tom Kim in a similar vein like last year? I know it was kind of like that was Asian tour as opposed to Japan tour. Maybe it's a little bit more limited, but you look at like what I'm always surprised about these Japanese events, like their Japanese, like how they finish in the Japan tour events actually ranks higher sometimes than like a 12th at the Zozo. Like you think if he's like finishing 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th or in Japan, it actually rank lower than Zozo, but it's not always the case. So their strength of field must be pretty decent. So for me, I don't think he's going to be Tom Kim, but like it feels like he's the type of person that could really have a go at the DP World Tour. Like we see it, like Kitayama. Like I think they're probably just a little bit better than this level, but not quite ready for the PJ Tour, and it's just depends on like whereas Tom Kim just went straight on, Hisatoon might need a couple of years to do it. Interesting enough, your note on the American Gunnar Weeby, there was one more American in Joshua Lee that also got a card as well. So don't know too much about him, couldn't find too much about him either. But those are the 2 Americans. So yeah,
maybe the next Kurt Kitayama in there somewhere, right?
Maybe,
for
yeah.
Sure.
So I think that would be really impressive. But yeah, Hisatoon for me is definitely the main player I think from this Q School class.
I do find it interesting that, Tom Kim played 6, 7, 8 PGA Tour events, won 2 of them. He played 1 DP World Tour event last year. He missed the cut, right?
Yeah.
So what's the tougher tour? It's hard to say.
Yeah, exactly.
Really,
it's
overall.
You would have thought like Richard Mansell would just go and win on the PGA Tour next season.
Yeah, for sure. So I think Hisatoon, he's the one it's such a good get for the DP World Tour to have him. The other one that I think is very intriguing from a pure talent perspective, and I feel like also he's the reason why having Baroff on the show is great because it doesn't take much to convince him to get a bet on some of these guys at low odds. We try to get access on here. It's pulling teeth to get access to leave the numbers, and he's a slave to them, and he's great with the numbers. That's the thing, and it's tough to really be able to evaluate these guys without too much of a sample on the same level. So I totally understand it. But one guy that I've definitely ripped some long shot bets on in the Porsche European Open was Nick Backham. And it's because as an amateur, he was very, very strong. I believe, he comes in like, I think he was a German national amateur in like 18 or 19 when he played over there. And then he came out and he was one of those guys that found instant success on the Pro Golf Tour. He was a winner as an amateur there. He was a winner in 2021 there twice. But every time he popped up to the DP World Tour, he missed the cut by a mile. So he finally gets a year on the Challenge Tour. And honestly, I think he ended up 25th. Yeah, 25th on the list there. So didn't qualify via that. Shows up with a great performance at the DP Q School. So I think that's overall just a talented guy that's now got through Q School that I think extremely high of him too.
I can't. Oh, go on.
I'm sorry. I was going to say, I think we kind of glossed over someone who may, well, I guess not the most brand recognition, but in terms of sort of the punters, we didn't mention Christopher Bring, did we?
No, we did not.
University of Texas, pretty good amateur. I know that he won. Was it the European Amateur, Tom, that he won when he beat Aberg and David Puig and all those guys? So, and he obviously just got through Q School, shot a 61 in the 4th round, 65. So I think it's just a name to watch for sure.
Yeah, I mean, he did really well in the Nordic Golf. Looking through it, I mean, he popped up on the DP World Tour for 2 starts this year. One of them was a 22nd place finish. Yeah, and he won that European Am just in 21. So I think it's a definite name there. I have a few more.
I think that was his only win as well. Like, so it's a pretty pretty significant win to get. Out of nowhere. I don't think he played too much to European college golf, if I'm right, but he didn't get any wins, so that's kind of stood out to me that he won that without much previous success.
I'll quickly run through guys that I thought were a little bit interesting. I mean, you mentioned Brown at the top. I think that was a really good one. RB. When you look at the winner of Q School, Simone Forsstrom, he is 33 years old, was decent on the Challenge Tour, but anytime he was down in the Nordic Golf League, you pretty much would pencil in a top 5 for him there. He had a really strong season that year. And really, I mean, previous times for him, like this is by far the best year he has ever had as a professional. He was a winner on the Challenge Tour back in 2016, but he definitely had a really good season in the Nordic Golf League. And to win Q School at the scores that he did was definitely impressive. I'm a sucker for John Axelson. He won 2 of the last 3 Nordic Golf League events this past season. Did honestly nothing on the Challenge Tour when he popped up there. But if you remember in 2021, he had won at the Himmerland course in a Nordic Golf League event. And then the next week he finished 17th while like losing a million strokes on the green. So he is somebody, I mean, all you need to do is ball strike in the one event, and Baroff and I are definitely going to be betting on you.
We're in. And he's got the great Denmark flag, which is, it's like catnip to us.
Combo.
Yes. I feel like what you're saying here is Baroff is reckless and Axis isn't, which is not. I don't know if that's a compliment or not.
It's just about sample size. Axis wants, a very large, long-term sample size. I care. Hey, what did you do on the back 9 Sunday? That's enough.
Yeah, but both of them hot fire this fall. I'm going to go a couple more. Tobias Eden. He was somebody who just had a decent stretch, again, on the Nordic Golf League. He was somebody, I was trying to think, was it as an amateur? No, he was just a Nordic Golf League guy. I think he went to school in the States, somewhere in the Pac-12 is where Eden went to school. Who else? Oh, Gary. Did someone mention Gary Hurley earlier?
No, but
highlighted.
I just had him as one of those guys.
I know why. I think did he qualify for the Open Championship? No, he was in that bunch of golfers that played really well on the Alps Tour as well. That's what looking through his season. Oh, he had a 5th like on the Irish Challenge this year on the Challenge Tour when he popped up. So again, one of these guys that when you only have samples on the smaller tours, it's hard to know, right? Like the Guido example, like you just don't really know if they don't have a Challenge Tour year and maybe just a couple of starts there. That was just something that, guys that I at least saw a little pop. And the one that I brought up, and again, 4 Challenge Tour starts this past season, 2 of them inside the top 6. A little bit of a journeyman, right? Sam Hutsby, Tom. Don't know a bunch about him. 34 years, but he like took 2 years off, so he didn't have any events. So I don't know, is his Challenge Tour success real? Is this just somebody that is just going to fall by the wayside? Because he was a DP World Tour member, back in like 14, 15 time frame.
Yeah, I mean, he turned pro in 2009, played the Alfred Dunhill Links, got to the qualifying score, finished second behind Simon Khan to get his European Tour card in 2010. He lost his playing rights just by 1 spot, which is pretty tough. And then he finished 48th on the Challenge Tour rankings next year. Again, he finished second behind David Dixon again in qualifying school. So in 2012, he then got to the European Tour again. He's just been a bit of a journeyman. Like he did beat Andrew Beef Johnston at the Kazakhstan Open in 2014. So he's got like winning pedigree, I guess. He was 6th on the world amateur rankings before he turned pro. He played in the Walker Cup, which you always like to see. So like there's something there. Like it's just, and I think the trouble is like I've kind of put them in a list of like, okay, if you've been here before and not done it, I'm just gonna not discount you, but I'm just not gonna get excited about you but by the same token of that, like we've probably learned not to give up on golfers too quickly because it does come back to bite you. Like I think players do just all of a sudden turn out to be really good. I mean, like Daniel Brown, like he's just caught fire, but it's taken him a little while to get there. It just depends. Like Laurie Cantor, like a late bloomer, for example, like it just happens. Like it just happens all the time where we think people are not. Dale Whitnell, for example, has had a very decent DP World Tour season, but had done nothing for a period of time by his own admission. I do want to just pump the tires of Nick Backham a bit more again. So it was actually 3 wins he had as an amateur on the Pro Golf Tour, because he had one in 2020 as well. And he opened with 76 at the Q School final before then finishing 6th. So just the bounce back ability was amazing. And then he finished 2nd, 3rd, 5th, and 7th on the Challenge Tour last season. So I think when I think of him and Tom McKibben, they just seem to me like they did everything but win on the Challenge Tour last season. I think because they didn't get that win, they don't go up high on the list. They don't automatically get their cards, etc. They kind of get forgotten about a little bit, and they're just that little bit younger as well. So for me, Nick Backham is, if Hitsatoon is 1A, he's 1B. I think maybe not even 1-2.
That's why I had Eden circled. So because you mentioned Backham shot 76 in the first round, so did Tobias Eden. So he went 76, then he goes 68, then he went 61 in round 3 when the other best round of the day was 64. So that the ability to go 68, 61, 67, 66, 69 after opening with a 76, him and Backham like that, I think that was, and the other 61 that was shot during Q School. So Backham had the other one, and then there was 3 of them. Christopher Bring, to Baroff's point, had one there too. So definitely things to note. I would also be remiss, we mentioned Tom McKibben on the Challenge Tour grads. We do also see John Murphy getting through qualifying school. So he was part of that Walker Cup team too. So I think not as strong as take on, but I often kind of loop those two in together when I think about that team.
I get the feeling that Bradley Todd's either going to win a lot or lose a lot on John Murphy this season, because he
usually wins a lot. So
let's probably follow John Murphy. He was, I think he actually got in on the last hole. He was definitely the last person in with his card. So shows a little bit of determination. I think he played at Pebble this season. He's got some invites and stuff. So I think he's pretty well kind of respected, and that people are expecting more from him. So I definitely think it's like I sort of said to you at the start that it's a bit of a average list, and there's a few journeymen in there. But when you actually start to break it down a little bit more, like we have, even Rivetto, I looked into him from France. I think the one thing I would take away from this is how many French people have managed to get their cards either through Cus or through the Challenge Tour. It seems to be a lot of French golfers kind of bouncing back. And the one overriding thing I think is just how many kind of it's not, I keep putting Nordic in the same breath, but it's not always Nordic. It's a bit like Denmark, Norway, Sweden, all that kind of area. I don't know if it's just because of the Pro Golf Tour and the Nordic Golf League, whether they're just such good mini tour levels that it does help them sharpen iron before they get to Challenge Tour. That might help them
for sure. No, I'm excited. And I think we can transition 2 ways. We can go, there's 2 events this week, right, with the Australia and South Africa event, but there is also golfers who, of course, maintain standard status on the DP World Tour. And maybe it transitions into this, but I think it was kind of fun if we previewed, like I said, 10 golfers outside of card holding guys are going to make the PGA Tour at the end of the season there. How about a hot take on one golfer? It can be somebody from qualifying school, it can be somebody from Challenge Tour. It could be just a standard golfer who kept status that you think has a shot or can finish in the top 10 next year. I've gone to Baroff everything first. Tom, I'm going to go to you first on this one.
I was hoping you were going to go to Baroff again. Let's have a look. I think that's not really a hot take, is it? Let's have a look at a bit further down. So there's a couple of players. I would say Marshall Schneider's got a really high upside, so I think he's someone that could kind of put some really good rounds together. Sean Crocker, I think if he can kind of he fell off a lot after that one win, which bothered me a little bit, because I think I don't know if he kind of rested on his laurels a little bit, which was a bit of a shame, or whether he just lost form, like that happens as well. So those 2 golfers would be someone that I would definitely look at. I think of the people we're mentioning, I don't see why Hitsatoon or Backham can't, kind of contend for those. So I think if you wanted 2 from people that are going to graduate, it'd be those 2. If you wanted 2 that could surprise, I think Schneider or Crocker could really earn a PGA Tour card. Because I think it would change people's perceptions. I think that when you're Sean Crocker and you win an event that he won, wasn't, worth that much in terms of world rankings, wasn't worth that much in terms of anything really, other than, proving that you can do it. When you know that it actually can contribute to a PGA Tour card at the end of the season, I think it's almost a complete switch in mentality. So I think we might see, I don't know, I'll say a better standard of DP World Tour next season, but I just feel like there'd be people more committed. Like I think we've seen, and I wonder, maybe you guys have got an opinion on this, but like we've seen in the fall on the PGA Tour that like they've been won by better players this time around, and I think it's because of the extra incentives they come with. They get more FedEx Cup points. They get basically all of the events are getting you into the Masters now, whereas they never used to. Like they're all worth a bit more money than they used to be. Is that enough to kind of boost people? And I think that's why you see people turning up and why people play better now.
Yep.
Yeah, it makes sense. I think there's a lot of uncertainty, right? So you got to play your best as much as you can. I'm just glad you didn't take my hot take here, because this is this is one of your guys. But it goes back to my overall sort of theme here, right? Class never goes away. So there is a Challenge Tour winner, multiple DP World Tour winner, has won in the States, great amateur career, kind of came back to life this summer for you, Tom. Your namesake, Tom Lewis.
Yeah.
I think he's going to continue to kind of get back to where he was. And I think as we've seen with Lewis, he can do it a lot of different ways. I mean, he almost won in Memphis at the World Golf Championship, right? He's long enough off the tee, great iron player, really good putter, especially relative to all these other guys. I imagine with all the time he had off, there was some sort of injury that he was dealing with. I'm not sure what it was, but I was very encouraged by what he did this summer. And I think you'll see him hopefully threaten that top 10 next year.
I think it just depends on his starts, right? Like, because how much status has he got?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not sure where he finished. I know, I just kind of looking stat wise, he was top 20 in the season long stuff, and first game approach, tee to green. And I assume as a multiple time winner, he's got some status that's looking.
Yeah, like he'll definitely get in more events than because I remember him doing an interview saying like if he didn't keep his card, he'd change jobs, like as a bit of a joke. But he will get into events, like he's playing in Australia, I think, this week. So
yes.
I think he's someone definitely, Ryan, that like if he gets off to a hot start, he's the type of person, just talent alone, right, he's going to get probably a PGA Tour. I guess in that same mold, like is Alex Fitzpatrick, like he was the devil of the Corn Ferry Q School. Everyone hated him because he kind of got that exemption in, which when you read about it, it sounds like he probably actually, I don't want to say deserved it, but it feels like he got shafted out of it in the first place from the PGA Tour U. So as much as people want to sort of lump on him and the fact that his just name was Fitzpatrick, but I do think he's the type of guy that can make use of limited starts and probably get himself a first full sort of status on the European Tour, DP World Tour, and then up to the PGA Tour.
I like it. All right, I'm going to go pretty off the board here too, and it's because, Tom, you sparked my memory with this golfer recently. And I'm trying to understand status a little bit here. So, category 19 is Tom Lewis, which is the 126 to 145 of the DP World Tour. So it falls below those that got through Q School and stuff. But I do think, no matter the case, any golfer that comes out hot this fall, you're going to find a way to get starts, right?
Yeah, 100%.
So Baroff mentioned, Tom Lewis had those, victories on kind of a little bit of everywhere. I believe this golfer's last win, would have been a two-time winner in 2016, back-to-back weeks on the European Tour, a winner in Qatar the next year, and he is still only 27 years old. And it's Junhyung Wang is back. He's playing in Australia this week. And what's interesting, so Junhyung Wang is Korean, so he had to take his military service in order to continue to then jump back to his professional career. So Wang comes back from the first time since October of 2020, and he plays 4 events on the Asian Tour. He played in all those international series events where he finishes 22nd, 5th, 23rd, and T3. Now, the crazy thing is they haven't really forgot about him when it comes to the books. I believe he's like 50 to 1.
I'm pretty sure he's only 33 to 1 over here for Australia.
So yeah, I'm seeing a 50s early. So I mean, he just came out of the gates firing once again. I mean, we've seen it with, like, I believe Shung Hill No, or
Yeah.
who else, right? And there was another guy that did military service on the PGA Tour
Sang
side.
Mu Bay won
Yes.
Corn Ferry Tour, didn't it?
So I mean, of course, it's a huge derailment to a career that was so promising. I guess derailment's the wrong word. It's a huge. It's obviously like a big.
No, it is.
It's a
Like,
big
it is a derailment. Like, it does just completely, like, you saw how much it meant to Sung Jae Im and Siwoo Kim and stuff for the Olympics. Like, they're petrified of losing that, like, tour status. And I think it was Kenny Kim that made a good point that, like, they're probably the people you should target for live, because, like, at least they'll get some security. Like, they cash some money, because we only see their careers going one way. And you point to what Jung Hong Wang's done since he came back is really impressive. And I did notice, I was just surprised, and it triggered my mind because of the fact that I'd mentioned him the other day, and then I sort of saw him on the odds board. But when I think about, he won the Mauritius Open, and Qatar as well. I feel like that's somewhere that Kurt Kitayama's played well. Kurt Kitayama's won the Mauritius Open. Maybe there's a little bit to that. So it would be really interesting to see how he does. I think that, like, talent-wise, when you win 2016, 2017, you're obviously very good. Is the first thing that you need to say at the time, right? He'd also won on the PGA Tour China in 2014 by 10 strokes against Xinjiang Zhang, who I think did play on the PGA Tour for a decent amount of time as well. So he turned pro in 2012 and then won 4 times in 2016, 2017. Got as high as 39th in the world. That's pretty impressive for someone that's still only 27 and been in that wilderness for a while. So when you see people, I guess you liken it to like an injury. Like, you see people that are out for 2 years or a year and a half, or they have checkered starts because they're injured. I always talk about, like, I don't think he's ever coming back, but like Jimmy Walker and the Lyme disease thing. Like, when people's, like, performances only dip because of things they can't control, it's definitely interesting to see how they bounce back.
Yeah, 100%. So he's one of the tops now from golfers that that are more standard DP World Tour holders. I'd be shocked if Guido's not top 10. Of course, he's got himself all lined up to have a big season. No need to push it to end this year when we got cards next year. But I guess another Old Faithful is, I really do think one of the more underrated, I don't know. I mean, like, Sandy Valimaki had a good year. Like, it was better than people give him credit for, I feel like. And it took a little time for him to get that back. But I still think Sammy's, like, I put him in, like, the Crocker mold, right? Like, I feel like the peak Sammy is
wild, man.
Great.
He's so wild off the tee.
You don't need accuracy on the
tee. He gets wacky Valimaki for a reason, doesn't he? But I think
what's more important here, Sky, is we need to pool our resources here and hire the putting coach who fixed Griot and send him to Antoine Rosner, and then we can all just collect every single week, because I don't know what Griot did, right? But he is now a good putter, a great putter, almost. And if Rosner just has a fraction of that, he's going to be absolutely elite.
Yeah, he would be on the Ryder Cup.
Is Rosner probably the guy, I guess maybe with Jordan Smith, that, like, in terms of ball striking, just appeals the most to the PGA Tour? Like, from guys that just likes to dig into strokes gained data, like, they're going to be the two that you would target on the PGA Tour straight away if they got starts, right? Unlike Fox and Højgaards and stuff, who rank highly off the tee but don't generally put all of them together. Like, Rosner does everything but putt. Like, it just, to me, he's probably, upside wise, he's probably the best player without, I don't know how to explain it, because I guess when you can't putt, then you're not, are you?
It's the Keegan Bradley thing, right?
Yeah,
and he's still got his wins. He won on the Challenge Tour multiple times. He's obviously won on the main tour now, and it's not going to happen often when you can't putt.
But the thing is, like, Rosner, when he won, was making putts from everywhere. Like, the couple of times that he won, like, he was just making bombs, and, like, it's, to me, it's almost one of those, like, he can make them from 50 feet and can't make them from 3. But I guess for me, if I was to have a player that I think could have a real breakout party, I'm going to ride this Gavin Green train for a pretty long time. Like, I think he's coming. The win is coming for him, and then we see what happens. But yeah, I think Gavin Green's got definitely things ahead of him.
So like, Data Golf does a good job at kind of weighing that strokes gained across the rest of the world, right? And they have Rosner as like the 30th best approach player in the world. They have Jordan Smith 22nd when you look at just pure ball striking overall. If I kept going down to the next DP World Tour golfer I would really run into is far down that list. Peters 52nd. And you keep going. Burmeister, I guess he's now, PGA Tour guy. Rosner would be 71st. He'd be one after Burmeister. So, I mean, there's a couple of live guys sprinkled in there. But, yeah, you look at the clear 1-2 in ball striking. And I guess 1, 2, 3 would be Peters, Smith, and Rosner, in my opinion, of these guys. And we know what the upside of the other two can be. We've gone deep into the show now here. I think we'll just step into both of the events. Now, we're not going to go through an entire preview of both of them. We're just going to kind of highlight guys that we like. I think I'm excited about both of them, but we'll start in Australia. How about? So Australia has Cam, it has Adam Scott, it has Cam Davis. I guess so. Cam Smith, I'm referring to. It has Cam Davis, it has Adam Scott, it has Lucas Herbert, Ryan Fox as kind of their core four. Leishman is teaming up there too. And then from a DP World Tour side, you have Højgaard, Minwoo Lee, Maroc also playing. I guess both the Højgaards are playing, but that's really it. I mean, these things are, I say, wide open when you have probably the second or third best player in the world there. But like, I don't know, it's right for the taking for long shots, and that's what we're going to maybe be going into. So Australia, Tom, I know you got a bet at the top of the board actually. So Tom, why don't you talk first here in Australia?
I mean, look, I think when you look at the event itself, so I'll start in 2013. Adam Scott beats Ricky Fowler. Greg Chalmers beats Wade Ormsby and Adam Scott in a playoff. Nathan Holman beats Dylan Fratelli and Harold Varner. Harold Varner wins. Then Cameron Smith, Adam Scott, Jediah Morgan, right? So to me, you've heard Adam Scott's name there a few times, and there's a couple of things. One, I just think he plays unbelievably well when he's at home. Like it's just a joke. I mean, when you look at his efforts here, he's won twice, finished second, third, and fourth in his last 5 starts at this event. So he just turns it on. The other thing I quite like is the fact that Steve Williams is back on the bag for the next couple of events in Australia. Now, does that matter too much? I think so, because I think it's like if Steve Williams is going to step out of retirement to take your bag, and they're going to do it again for the majors next year because they're going back to a couple of venues they've played well at in the past, it feels like he's got a renewed sense of confidence in Scott. Scott's maybe taking it a little bit more seriously. Like, I think he views it as like, this is my last chance saloon to be really great. He's probably turned down Liv, I guess. So he's now giving it one last shot to win a major championship. I think his big thing is being a 2-time major winner. Having Steve Williams on the bag is going to help. So I think he gets his season. I don't know what you call it this time of year. I guess getting his season off to the best start is what I would call it, because it is a new season. But you then get kind of a 4 or 5 week break before Adam Scott plays. It's tough. So I do think Adam Scott will go well. I know he's in like 9-1, so it's kind of out of form for me, but I like him.
Is there any reason why 365 pulled their odds? They're no longer up. They were up early this morning with. I just didn't see if any big guy withdrew or anything. There's still States books that are up with them, so there must be repricing it in the morning. It's kind of odd.
They probably realized they gave me too good of a Minwoo Lee number.
I mean, that could be it.
Yeah. No, I also looked at Adam Scott. It's kind of interesting. It's quote unquote homecoming for him, but he doesn't live here anymore, right? I believe he lives in Switzerland now. Yeah. Probably doesn't get back here much. And I just feel like that. I feel like for him, it's the end of the season, right? So you referenced starting his season off. I'm sure he's bringing the family down. I'm sure it's a whole vacation, right? There's probably more to it than that. But kind of like what we saw with the studs last week, I expect all these guys to play well. Like, I expect Cam Smith and Cam Davis and Minwoo and I expect them all to play well. I think you're kind of splitting hairs up here. I went with Minwoo Lee just because I'm tired of hopping off of guys too early. And I'll do it at the Joburg with Xander Lombard, sort of same thing. Like, I've been betting these guys for a while. Minwoo, specifically has been trending towards a win, right? He's got a couple of top 5s, played pretty well again last week. It just feels like it's coming. And this course where you can hit drivers and be a little more creative, I think will suit him really well.
Now, this isn't he won in Australia at the other course, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's when you won like 99% of a prize pool that DraftKings offered, when you had like the Fox Minwoo nuts basically that week. But those courses like fit those guys to a T.
Minwoo Lee's been third and fourth in 2 starts in this event. Like, I think is basically what like you have to take from it. Like, it was a lot weaker field in January. So they played this event already in January at this golf course. So I'll come on to that kind of a bit more in my next selection. But the fact that he finished third here in 2020 kind of shows you, I guess, probably what it means to him, how comfortable he feels. But you look, like Cameron Smith's won it twice over the last 3 or 4 years. Adam Scott's won it twice over the last 5 years. You know, Jeff Ogilvy's won it in whatever the last 10 years. Like, the better players win it. Greg Chalmers drops down from the PGA Tour, wins it a couple of times. So the better players do win it. So I know you can. I think in terms of long shots, you can get them for kind of like top 5 in each way value. But I think you do have to kind of take a player from the top of the board. But I think that goes down right from 4-1 Sky to like 22-1 for Adrian Moronk. Like, you've got Smith, Scott, Minwoo Lee, Fox, Davis, Højgaard, Herbert, Lucas Herbert, Mark Leishman, Adrian Moronk. Like, that's a pretty steady list of golfers. And I think the people that I'm not betting that I'd be really keen to see how they do. One was Minwoo Lee. The other one would be Ryan Fox and Rasmus Højgaard. Like, it, as I said about Fox earlier, like this, I think this is good enough field to prove how good you are. Like, if one of those beats Cameron Smith or Adam Scott down the stretch, then that's a big deal. If they beat Cameron Davis even down the stretch as a PGA Tour player, like, it's a big deal. Whereas if they kind of just beat each other, as they do on the DP World Tour, it's not kind of a big thing. So I think it's a big opportunity for someone like a Rasmus Højgaard.
I don't really have my selections, I guess, finalized, so I'll still post a card every week throughout the fall because I can't help it. But you know, I'm more intrigued as I kind of go down a little bit. Now, one finish this year that'll stand out to me that I'll kick myself for. I don't even know what he ended up. It was a week Guido won, so I don't even know where this guy finished. But remember when Paul Bargnon popped over to the DP World Tour out of zero form? And shows up there at triple digits and is right in the mix. I feel it's kind of odd that Harrison Endicott is like 70s, 80s, and he's got 2 top 12s on the PGA Tour this fall. You know, like, I'm just not going to forget those guys this year. Like, it's just something out of principle that if you're a PGA Tour player and you're finishing like with decent finishes, like, you know, I'm in on that when the numbers are. That's why I bet Kitayama and Herbert half the time, because I feel like they have these, you know, flashes there. So he was one that stood out. 2 Australian Tour winners that I think really highly of, that had strong amateur careers. And this is where like our friend Jude just lives. Like, this is, if you need to follow somebody, follow our Jude Deloitte. He's just like salivating for these type of weeks, and he's been on David Micheluzzi for as long as I know. And Micheluzzi finally got his first win recently there. Micheluzzi was a stud amateur. He's somebody who we just follow closely on. He popped up for the Alfred Dunhill Links, finished 36, but had an excellent year overall there. So he won. And then another golfer who got his first win, who I used to bet on the Australian Tour quite a bit, he actually got a spot live start, I believe. 3 of them. Travis Smith is a pretty like decent golfer, I think, overall. Excellent head of hair too. He's got a nice blonde man bun. But he is somebody who finished 3rd at the Vic Open back in 2020 when we used to have kind of those events, 15th at the Australian PGA Championship in 19. I think he's talented. And then I have 3 amateurs, no surprise. I'll go to you guys. I'll go to you guys. Anybody else you're intrigued at here?
So for me, like, Hisatoon's there at 50-1. I did look at Endicott because of the reasons you said, but when I looked at kind of like his form in this event, it was like pretty nondescript. But things definitely changed. It's definitely has he gone to a new level? Like, you learn that pretty quickly. If he plays well this week against when he's finished 40th, 50th and miscut whatever in this event before, then you know he's a different player now and something to keep an eye on. But I've gone to Jediah Morgan. Like, I don't really see the reason to ignore the person that won this event earlier in January by 11 strokes. I get that he's a guy that's gone to live. I get that he's beaten up on a pretty poor field that time in January. He beat Andrew Dope by 11 strokes, but he won by 11 strokes shooting a 69 in the final round. So he shot 65, 63, 65. He beat Minwoo Lee by 13 strokes. Minwoo Lee was in there like 5th. And that's not a knock on Minwoo Lee. It's just like for context, right? He won the Australian Amateur, beat Tom McKibben 5-3 in the final. So I think
you
this
know
is a
that
guy...
the Australian Amateur was at this course too.
Right, so he's a two-time winner on this golf course then.
Yes, yep, he beat McKibben that week in the finals here.
I mean, sign me up. I don't really need to say anymore then. So like he like, I get the whole live thing. I get the whole giving up on it, but didn't he, like, he won the Order of Merit of the PGA Tour Australasia as well? Like,
yeah,
it's pretty impressive.
I mean, he's like,
Sure.
I bet him too, man. He's like 90-1 at some books, like with an each way. Over
It's
here.
a perfect thing of like people.
He
just
finished
not
the live
like him
season
anymore.
kind of good too.
He did, like that's what I mean. Like, he played decent golf. You know, again, we don't know what the context of decent golf is on live, but you know, we can't rule out some people based on, like, we're going to say Cameron Smith's playing well because he's playing okay on live, like, so, and he's 4-1. I know he's not anywhere near the same type of golfer, but if Jediah Morgan is what people expect him to be, he's probably going to be a PGA Tour golfer, and he's 66-1 on a course he's won on twice. I'll just take a chance.
It's also definitely viewed differently there, and maybe I probably view it differently for Judd Morgan versus somebody else, right? Like, you jump on that opportunity if you're Jediah Morgan, like
100%. Like, you just
like,
take advantage of a hot form.
The Australasia Tour was tweeting all about Cam on Sunday how they broke a Guinness Book of World Records for the largest golf clinic ever, right? Like, it's a celebration for some of these guys, and they're, it's not like they're feeling at odds at a major as the people let out. You know what I mean? Like, this is a standard golf event for these guys. There's no different pressures. RB, anybody else for you here?
Just Daniel Hillier. We mentioned him earlier, so I need to dive back in, but he was 66-1 with the places, and he's been playing well, so why not?
One thing about Hillier I did know on the Challenge Tour grads, he had the highest like go low rate, basically.
Love it.
Like, he was like 8% of his rounds were like 3 strokes adjusted under, like it was like really strong. So okay, amateur time. So the thing is, it's just kind of odd. I don't know how Devin Bling ended up playing PGA Tour of Australia. RB, you brought this, I think, to my attention when you saw him in the field list, right? Like, he is out of,
I don't know where he's been.
Like, that was the thing. Like, he finished school in spring, right? I think he hasn't played since May, he has not played an amateur event. So then he pops over, and he only had played 2 in 2020 as a whole. If you remember Devin Bling, he's the one that lost to Victor Havel at the US Am finals at Pebble Beach. I think he had to have been a freshman, right? I think it was very early, went to UCLA. So then he comes out in his first ever OWGR event, and finishes, I think, 26th in the Victorian. So he finished 2 amateur events. So he must have like left UCLA after he had a really strong 2021. So he's like 200s like here, you know. So I mean, you look at somebody who reached top 30 in the Wagger, I believe 34th was his best ranking. So he was one. Luis Dablabar was another one. So he reached a high world ranking as well. He reached 23rd in the Wagger rankings. His last event was 2023. He won the North and South Amateur Championship, which is a decent one. I mean, he beat like Highsmith there, who's strong on there. Jediah Morgan, he beat in that event overall. So it's not the really big stateside one, but he had some pedigree there. He tried to qualify for Q School on the Korn Ferry Tour side and did not make it through. But he had a really, like, one of the best rounds of the entire tournament there too. But he's just played on the PGA Tour of Australasia there. He had a handful of top 10 finishes this season. Just always intrigued at an amateur. You know, he had 3 wins in 21. So he's still kind of getting his feet under him. And then the total, like, I think this guy's probably 500s. Let's see, how high did this guy get? Lachlan Barker is his name. He was 337 in the Wagger. So nothing that was too crazy there. But again, he's one of these golfers that just went amateur, and then he's going into immediate kind of OWGR events, and with a little bit of success. So he finished 4th last week in the Australasia event. He had a made cut before that. And I never understand this. If you ever played on the PGA Tour of Australia's site, there's like 4 tours within their own ecosystem. Only one of them gets the OWGR points, but Barker finished like 2nd in one of those the week prior. So his last 2 events are really strong. and he's 500. They priced the other ones okay. There's another amateur in South Africa I get to talk about too. But those were basically, Daniel Gal was another one. Tom, do you know anything about Daniel Gal?
No. If I said I would, I'd be a fraud.
What about Harrison Crow? I thought that was one that you would throw out.
Jude said something about Crow today to me, so I don't know much about Crow.
No, I just know that he just won that Asia Pacific Amateur.
Oh, you're right. Yeah.
And there were some names that I recognized in there. Ratchanam was in there. Wen Yi-ding was in there. A few other guys, but I just know that he won something recently.
Yeah, you're right. That's a really good. The Asia Pacific Amateur is a really good one. So he played on the Japan Open and had missed. He wasn't really that good in the amateur, but Jude definitely did like him. Daniel Gal is another Australian who finished top 5 last week. He had Monday qualified into the 3M Open and missed the cut recently too. So just some world travelers overall there. But I could spend way too much time talking. We have to go to South Africa. Okay, I'm gonna start with Baroff this time.
Yep. So sort of the same strategy. Guys that I've been on, I'm going to stay on. Lawrence, 18-1, and Xandra Lombard at 40. And then a couple of the Challenge Tour guys that we talked about already. I bet Matthew Baldwin, Bryce Easton, and Daniel Brown.
I love the Brown bet. I really do.
It was 100-1. That seemed big for a guy who's on an all-time career heater right now. So.
Yes. Amen. Tom, I'm going to pepper a couple in here because I'm going to have to catch my breath before I go deep again. So I liked Brown a lot. 100% the point there. We're going to talk with 2 Sunshine Tour players. One that anytime he is teeing up in the world, I am always paying attention to Jaden Tracecaper, right? Like he came out of the scene at like 19 years old and was out here finishing second at the Alfred Dunhill Championship. He probably should have won that event. I think he led the field tee to green and kind of melted on the back 9 a little bit. He was 20th the week prior, but he was if you look at his 2019, I think he was primarily a junior. That year he had 9 victories in 2019 overall. 2018, just kind of as he got going with it. But again, just probably the prized amateur kind of coming up through there. Had a 6th at the South African Open in 2020. And the thing is, he's coming in probably the best form that we've seen out of him. He did not find any success on the Challenge Tour, but on the Sunshine Tour, last 5 weeks, 9th, 6th, 2nd, 17th, 10th, lost in a playoff at the Fortress Invitational. It was his home course and he lost there. So I think he's probably in the 50s, I think, odds wise. So they definitely priced him correctly from that standpoint. The other one, can I get an odds check on Peter Moolman? He won last week, I believe, or 2. He won his last time out. He might be deeper than we need to talk about now. But Peter Moolman won second stage of Q School, and then he's 66s over here. So, okay, ready to talk about that. He won second stage of Q School in the DP World Tour and won his last time out on the DP or on the Sunshine Tour. Strong finishes. Made top 25 at the Stein City Championship earlier this year on the DP World Tour. Older guy, 31 years old from that. But those 2 are kind of my earlier, shorter selections, and I have 3 more after you talk, Tom.
Yeah, so for me, I'm the same as Baroff here with Xander Lombard. He's twice the runner-up at this event. We know he can kind of break through. He hasn't. 5 top 3 finishes on the DP World Tour. 2 of them are coming this event. Another one's coming to the Alfred Dunhill Championship in South Africa as well. So clearly loves playing at home. Like RB again, Bryce Easton went into the Grand Tour final with 3 top 8 finishes in his last 6 starts and then finished second there. So I just love the form that he's coming into. He's got 3 Sunshine Tour wins in his career. I never view these events as much of a step up from the Sunshine Tour. I know there are better players in the event, but you're playing at home, so I think it kind of negates it a little bit. He was 14th in this event on debut, bounced back with a 7th in 2020 before finishing 23rd in the 36 hole event last year. So Bryce Easton for me really did catch the eye. And I've just gone with Tom McKibben, just on upside alone, 4th and 6th his last 2 events, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th and 7th on the season. As I said earlier, he's played 2 of his 4 best finishes on the AWGR have come in South Africa for Tom McKibben as well. So to me, he just strikes me as someone that really is overpriced. And I will pass on, because this isn't really my note. I kind of read it from Ben Cody's piece earlier today that Tristan Stridham is a, he played well at the Q School here. I think he's actually got the course record at this golf course. So not many people have got experience here. He did pop up quite a few times in South Africa in the past as well. He has his first pro win coming to South Africa Tour Championship when he beat Coetzee, Harding, and 9A, but at another Nicholas design course as well. So to me, like the points that Ben made there, and the fact that he's got the Houghton Golf Club experience makes Tristan Stridham an interesting player as well.
Yeah, I think he had 2 events from Mike Miller's sheet here, a first and a third at here. Skaber played in that event and finished 10th too. All right, I got 3 more. I'm just gonna rip the Band-Aid as we go through. A couple more. They fit the exact mold, right? Like, so one, I might need another odds check here as we go, because 365 had this guy. Like, I expected him to be 500 to 1, and I'm trying to see here. Let's see where he's priced. 125. Gerard Pepler. I mean, like,
Never
I'm just
heard of
going
him.
through. Either have I. So when I came across his name in research, it was like pretty odd that like he's not on Data Golf at all.
So
Like,
if you use odds checker, he goes from 65 to 1 all the way up to 200 to 1. So he's
So he
wild
basically why he has 3 wins on the Big Easy Tour in his last 4 starts on the Big Easy Tour. He went first, third, first, and first. Now he popped over to the Sunshine Tour, was 36 and 38 in the middle of that. So I mean, he's just ripping up Ernie's tour down over there. So who knows, right? Like we don't know anything about. Like I literally couldn't find much at all outside of that on him, like an age check or anything for him overall. But let's see. Can I see if we? I think his first OWG. No, he's been playing the Big Easy Tour, I think, for a couple of years. Since 2018, he's been playing on the Big Easy Tour. So I don't know. I mean, three victories at his last 4 events is pretty strong overall for me to take an interest there. And then Casey Jarvis is somebody who kind of had fit that same mold of Jaden Skaper, where he was one of these top amateurs, right? Reached 40th when he went pro. I think he went pro or mid this year. And he is now, since he has gone pro, he finally got into a shot. His last time out, he finished second on the PGA Champs. I believe he lost to Coetzee on the Sunshine Tour there. He had made a cut in the Alfred Downhill Links. He had won on the Big Easy Tour earlier this year, but finally found a little bit of success in the Sunshine Tour after having a really, really strong amateur career. Jarvis odds, I'm guessing he's probably sitting around 100 as well. Tom, you got to look there. I have so many tabs open at this point.
Casey Jarvis is 150 at DraftKings Sportsbook, 200 elsewhere, so good prices.
Okay. Yep. And then the last one, and probably the one I'm most excited about, Dan Bradbury. So Dan Bradbury, I believe he's English, Tom.
200 to 1 on DraftKings Sportsbook.
Okay, so he comes out of, I think he was like Division II Player of the Year a couple of years back. Transfers to Florida State his senior year, has a decent senior year there, and then he gets a couple of starts after. So I think he had, a handful of top 10s, made the stroke play, and then he was just a really, really good Division II player overall. And then he comes out and gets some starts. He misses the cut in the Kazoo. He makes 3 cuts in a row on the Challenge Tour, 1 being inside the top 20, and then he plays the Open de España and finishes 13th. So again, small sample size. I think he bonded off the tee and could putt it well in that event from a strokes gains perspective. But those kind of 3 young guys fit my, well, I guess Skaper's young too, but like those guys kind of catch my eye. I got to really look through the odds and kind of dig through the tea leaves to see who I'll end up landing on. Probably all of them, of course. But
just one more before we kind of get out. So I don't know if we were doing the show at this point. It was the tail end of 2020, so I don't think we were. But Jack Blau was he was leading this event at the 36 hole stage in 2020, and I was on him at, I don't know, like 100 to 1 or 80 to 1 or something like that. just because of the fact that he played well in this event in the past. So he's got 2 7th place finishes here, 2016, 2020, obviously at different golf courses. And then he finished 23rd when it was a 36-hole event last year. So you don't know kind of where he'd gone up or down the leaderboard. He's priced at 400 to 1, like he's never going to be able to play golf again. And that, to me, seems a bit off. That's at DraftKings Sportsbook, so I think it's pretty impressive. Just looking at his recent events, like he finished 23rd last time out. It's not 21st, sorry. It's not great. He was well off the pace of, he was 11 off the pace of George Cozier, who beat Casey Jarvis. But 32nd and 21st, his last 2 starts. He's got a 9th midway through the year. Like it's not like he's actually dead, like he's priced. So look for Jack Blau.
Oh, do not tempt Baroff with that.
I've certainly lost money on him.
I could see you nodding away, which meant that you had that pain.
I mean, it's a marathon show, right? We're running deep here, well over an hour. But again, this is kind of putting a bow on the calendar year for us. And this is a good way to look out for guys as they have some starts on the DP World Tour as they finish here. A lot of opportunity now. These fields are definitely more top heavy than what we've seen. We didn't really talk in South Africa, but you have Bazane, you have Kutsia. RB mentioned he's on Thuriston there. Becker's teeing it up. Duplessis, Langasca are the top guys here. JC Ritchie coming up. Kalen Shores 33 to 1 and some spots, right? It's definitely not as top heavy in South Africa as we see in Australia. So maybe we tend a little bit more long shots there. But we have seen guys contend from many different tours right away on this. So I don't know. I love this type of it. There's a lot to do a weekly show right now with everything going on, but definitely so posting cards. Tom, where can they find you on Twitter?
Yeah, so it's Tom Jacobs 93 on Twitter. I will probably take a little bit of a break just from the golf at the moment, just while the World Cup's on, and just trying to get it. It's good to rest and recuperate and get the love back for it. So I've really enjoyed tonight. Like this was I know we kind of talked about this as kind of a week or 2 in the making. Like we just really enjoyed the idea of doing this, and unfortunately we didn't have access on it to make it a 4-man show. But like it was really good to have the 3 of us chat this up. So. I would say, like you said there, just in South Africa is probably the best place to take some long shots because I think they can be beaten at the top. Like they've had long seasons, they're traveling over the PGA Tour, etc. And we talked about Backham, Schott, Jorgensen, all of those guys are kind of in the 125s, 150s, 175s to 1 marks. That 2 or 3 events in, they could be 50 to 1. So I think it's definitely a place to take some shots. But that would be my closing statement.
Yep, RB, where we can find you at?
Yep, same. Baroff 427. Probably won't take a break from Twitter, but we'll see. Yeah, I assume Wiley and I will be back in the new year. We usually kick off things around Torrey Pines time, when the fields get better and sort of the real season starts. But yeah, like you said, I love this time of year, right? It's the Fall Swing Corn Ferry Tour guys who are making their marks, and these guys jumping up kind of off the Challenge Tour. So excited to watch some golf for sure.
Yep, 100%. We should actually. I haven't seen them launched yet, but because there's not any PGA Tour golf to be competing with, better prize pools than we normally get on DraftKings. So I'm excited to play DFS for these events because you can get some low-owned guys across the board for it. Now you'll see Tom and I back in January. I think the first event of the year is that little match play that they're doing, that Hero Cup. But we'll have back-to-back Rolex events in Abu Dhabi in Dubai to close out January. But you can find me at Skyhook DFS. And thanks, Ryan, for coming on tonight. Thanks, Tom, as always, for a great year. It's been a blast with this. We're excited for Guido to get a PGA Tour card next year and the rest of these guys to come through with us. Hopefully our next season is full of winners. And we appreciate all your guys' support. And we'll catch you in the new year. Happy holidays. And thanks again for everything.